In his poem, Yihye Tov Ani Maftiach, All Will Be Well, I Promise, the late Israeli poet Chaim Gori is asked, Ma shlomcha, how are you? He answers in the poem, Shlomi kishalom ami, I am as my people are. This line has been quoted often after October 7th, which names a profound truth. The individual Jew is bound up with the fate of our people. Our collective pain can almost eclipse our personal lives. Our trauma, our blessings, all shared. 2 years after October 7th, amid a fragile, very fragile ceasefire, global turmoil around the Jewish story and Israel, and now the mayoral election that took place here in New York, I find myself asking, how are we? Really, how are we, this Jewish people? And I worry about the answer. There is little shalom among us. There is little peace among us. Our priorities, our fears and aspirations feel fiercely contested. We are on edge for different reasons. Just 2 nights ago, protesters gathered outside Park East Synagogue during a Nefesh B'Nefesh event, chanting from New York to Gaza, globalize the Intifada, amongst many other anti-Semitic slogans, equating Jews and synagogues with the policies of the Israeli government is an anti-Semitic and deeply unsettling. And while the mayor-elect's press secretary affirmed that no one should fear attending a house of worship, she went on to insist, as in quotes, these sacred spaces should not be used to promote activities in violation of international law. A statement that at best displays a troubling lack of judgment. Many in the Jewish community are rightly alarmed. Jewish safety cannot be conditional on Israeli policy. I only wish the Jewish community was as forceful in confronting anti-Semitism on the right that it is that's a conversation for another time. Still, my concern extends beyond the rise or weaponization of anti-Semitism or the erosion of democratic norms in our country, in Israel. I am worried because our current posture, fearful, reactive, locked in binaries, and stripped of nuance, threatens to tear us apart. It limits our imagination. It shrinks our spiritual horizon. It belittles the inheritance we carry. Chaim Gori has many poems, of course, but he has another famous poem called Yerusha, heritage. The ram came last of all, and Avraham did not know that it came to answer the boy's first question, first of his strength when his day was on the wane. The old man raised his head, seeing that it was no dream and that the angel stood there. The knife slipped from his hand. The boy, released from his bonds, saw his father's back. Yitzchak, as the story goes, was not sacrificed. He lived for many years, saw what pleasure had to offer, until his eyesight dimmed. But he bequeathed that hour to his offspring. They are born with a knife in their hearts. Ma'achelet b'libam. Gori suggests that although Yitzchak walked down the mountain alive, he did not walk down unchanged. Something remained on that altar, something wordless, unprocessed, and unresolved. And it not only became part of his spiritual DNA, but ours as a Jewish people too. They are born with a knife in their hearts. Not a literal knife, though sometimes that has also been true, but an inheritance of vulnerability, of fear, of facing a world in which trust can be broken in an instant, and in which survival itself can feel precarious. And when you read Yitzhak's story through this lens, the Torah actually begins to look a little different. Yitzhak becomes not simply the quiet patriarch, the bridge between Abraham and Yaakov, but a human being carrying an unspeakable wound, a moral injury. He is a man who repeats the lives of those around him because he cannot imagine a life of his own. A man who cannot leave the land, who redigs old wells, who accepts a wife chosen for him. A man whose great formative moment is not a journey, but a binding. It is as though Yitzhak spends his whole life trying to live after the moment when his life almost ended. Gori's poem doesn't criticize Yitzhak. You could say it dignifies him. It tells the truth, that survival is not the same as healing, and that the impact of trauma doesn't stop with the one who experiences it. It ripples forward. It shapes families, stories, patterns, identities. And maybe that's why Gori calls the poem Yerusha, heritage, because some inherit land and some inherit blessings, and some inherit the unresolved silence of the moment when the knife slipped from Abraham's hand. If we look closely at Yitzhak's life through this lens, the Torah begins to sound like someone trying to live with a wound he doesn't have language for. If you notice, Yitzhak never speaks to Abraham again in the Torah. He rarely is an active agent for his own or his family's destiny. In last week's Parashat Chayei Sarah, Abraham procures a wife for Yitzhak with his servant Eliezer. Yitzhak is not an actor in this drama. He is a passive recipient. He doesn't say a word in last week's parasha. Ultimately, the Torah tells us that when Rivka is brought to him, Yitzhak takes her into his mother's tent. Vayevaeha Yitzhak ha'ohla Sarah imo, vayikach et Rivka v'tehin lo le'isha, vayeaveha, vayinachem Yitzhak acharei imo. Yitzhak then brought her into the tent of his mother Sarah, and he took Rivka as his wife. Yitzhak loved her and thus found comfort after his mother's death. It is at once a beautiful moment, but also a revealing one. Yitzhak's marriage begins not with an open future, but with the pain of a loss he is trying to fill. Rivka is not the start of a new story. She is the balm for an old one. Yitzhak is the only patriarch who never leaves the land. When there is famine in the land, in this week's parasha, God explicitly tells him, do not go down to Egypt. Maybe that command is divine, but Yitzhak didn't need convincing. Maybe the world felt too dangerous to venture far. After the Akedah, perhaps safety means sitting still. Then there is the episode in Gerar in this week's parasha too. Yitzhak, like Abraham before him, passes his wife off as his sister. But unlike Abraham, who navigates the world with daring and imagination, Yitzhak seems to simply repeat what he has seen. It is as though he is living a script inherited rather than writing his own story. And perhaps most poignantly, Yitzhak redigs his father's wells. He gives them the very same names. The Torah goes out of its way to emphasize this. Vayashov Yitzchak vayachpor et be'erot hamayim asher chafru bimei Avraham aviv. Vayisatmum Philistin acharei mot Avraham. Vayikra lahen shemot kashemot asher kara lahem aviv. Yitzchak dug anew the wells which had been dug in the days of his father Avraham, and which the Philistines had stopped up after Abraham's death, and he gave them the same names that his father had given them. Instead of carving out new spaces, Yitzchak preserves old ones. Instead of naming, he renames. Instead of innovating, he restores. Yitzchak lives a life of repetition, not reinvention. You could say he's on a treadmill over and over again. Maybe this is a certain kind of faithfulness, stability, continuity, or maybe it is something else. The instinct of a person who learned early that the ground can disappear beneath you, that the trusted parent can raise a knife, that safety is never guaranteed. For such a person, digging a new well is a risk. Reopening an old one is survival. Even in the episode of the stealing of the blessing by Yaakov, Rivka is the actor, some say even a prophet. Yitzchak is acted upon, and some say he might have abdicated his responsibility, that he knew more than he let on and just let it be. His blindness was not merely a sign of old age, according to some. One Midrash explains that when Yitzchak was bound upon the altar and his father was about to slay him, at that very moment the heavens opened, the ministering angels saw it and wept, and their tears flowed and fell upon Yitzchak's eyes, which became dim. Yitzchak is the patriarch who experiences the most dramatic rupture, the Akedah, and yet he is the one who speaks the least. The Torah gives him very few words. Perhaps silence itself became his coping mechanism, the only way he knew to carry what happened on the mountain. We are a people, the Jewish people, that stood on that mountain. And it was not only at the Akedah time and time again throughout the course of history, we have experienced the near-death experience, trauma and profound fear. But Gori, in his poem Yerusha, is not only retelling a biblical story, he is diagnosing a spiritual condition. Yitzchak survives, but he does not transform. And the untransformed pain becomes the inheritance. They are born with a knife in their hearts, ma'achelet belibam. Yitzchak's story suggests that unexamined trauma repeats. It echoes. It passes forward. And now we are not only a people who are born with a knife in our hearts, but a people with a state and with weapons in our hands. Both are true, and both, if unexamined, will lead to more untransformed pain and continuity without transformation, survival without imagination. The next generation from Yitzchak, Yaakov, wrestles. We are named for his wrestling, Yisrael, the one who wrestles with God. Yaakov seeks to transform. Even when he repeats old patterns, he tries to break them. He names places. He leaves and he returns. He demands a blessing of his own. Yitzchak may not have rewritten the story he was given, but perhaps he made space for a child who could. Our inheritance, our heritage, is well more than a knife in our hearts. And maybe that's part of our spiritual task, to honor the Yitzchak in us, in our families, in our communities, who carried what they could, quietly and faithfully, even if imperfectly, filled with fear of what might come. But also to find the courage Yaakov offers, the courage to wrestle our way into a new narrative. Shabbat Shalom.